pleasure of introducing Rebecca Levey, who's the co-founder of kidsviews.com, a wonderful website all about video. And Rebecca, I'll give it to you.
Thank you, Andrea. Can everybody hear me? Is my mic on? Welcome. So we're going to have a conversation today about raising digital kids. Hopefully more conversation and then less just demos. So I'm the co-founder of kidsviews.com. Kidsviews is the only COPPA-compliant video platform by and for kids under 13 who are not legally allowed to have YouTube accounts. So on Kidsviews, kids make and share video reviews about books, movies, technology, fashion, sometimes their little sister, you name it, they review it. And they can share these reviews via email, and their parents can share them via Twitter and Facebook. One of the things we've learned running a website for kids under 13 is that parents very much want to feel that their kids are safe online, but they don't necessarily want to be the ones monitoring them. So it is certainly on the company themselves to make sure that these kids are being kept safe. And we do that via moderation of all videos, and as well, we also moderate all the comments. My panelists today are all in this kid space with incredibly interesting products, both for helping you monitor your kids, but also really empowering kids to leap into that technology. As much as we call them digital natives, they really don't know what they're doing. So this empowers them to sort of learn along the way so that they can become responsible digital natives rather than just fumbling their way through with mixed results. So I'm going to go down and have everyone just introduce themselves, starting with Jacob.
Sure. Is this on? So my name is Jonathan Peachey. I'm the CEO of a company called Phillip Technologies. We're a relatively new company that is building, or has built, in fact, a wearable phone and smart locator for kids, targeted at kids age 5 to 11. Very much designed to empower them, keep them connected to their family. Do you want me to demo, or should we do that in a second?
We'll do that in a second.
Okay, great.
Hi, I'm Valerie. I'm a Montessori teacher, and I'm a co-founder of Les Trois Ailes, which is an educational app developer based on the Montessori method.
Hi, I'm Lewis James Davis. I'm the co-founder of KMS Solutions, CEO of VST Enterprises, ambassador for the Manchester University in digital, creative, and healthcare technology. I'm also a father of 2, and I'm expecting my 3rd in July.
I'm Jacob Anderson. I am the owner and founder of kidsemail.org. It's an email service provider for kids so that parents can monitor the emails going back and forth and protect their children while they're online.
And I'm Raul Gutierrez, and I'm the CEO of TinyBop. We make digital toys for kids, educational toys.
So we're going to start out this conversation sort of talking about what we think kids' safety is online. I think maybe the parent perspective is a little different than the kid perspective. But aside from COPPA, which is really about marketing to kids, there's a different level of what parents want, which is their kids not to encounter strangers, pornography, bullying, or be perpetrating bullying themselves. And then there's sort of the government side, which is don't market to them. So how do your products, which I think a lot of them do, sort of empower kids to learn these safety issues and really address the concerns of parents? Who wants to take that?
Well, I'll jump in on that. I think that's the balance you have to play, or you have to work with. Almost every parent, if you have a couple, one parent thinks technology is wonderful. Our child should be learning more about this. It's going to prepare them for the technological world that lies ahead. And you have one parent that's scared to death because they know the bullying, the predators, all the scary things that they might encounter online because, as we know, it's a dangerous world when you log onto the internet. And so what we believe at Kids Email, our whole entire premise is let kids use technology but have controls in place so that parents are aware of who's communicating with your child, what the conversations are, and how to protect the child and make sure it's a safe environment for them to be in.
So how do you do that with Kids Email, and how do you do it to make it cool for the kids who really all want a Gmail account, how do you make kids' email appealing so they don't feel like they're getting sort of the baby version?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when they're really, really little, they don't know the difference, right? We have an app where they can draw smiley faces. The email can actually read to them, and they might be luke@kidsemail.org, right? And they have parental controls that parents get copied on incoming or outbound messages. They might need to approve messages before they come to their child if it's not in the contact list. But there comes an age where a kid doesn't want to tell their friend that their email address is luke@kidsemail.org. And so we have kmail.org as well. Just like Gmail, it doesn't have the whole insinuation that this is the kid's product, and it completely separates it from any of the safety setting or any of the connotation of this is a safety product for me. This is my email address, and parents can change settings for kids too. As you get older, you don't need to be copied on every single thing that comes in and out. You can let the kid grow up while still having some parental controls in place, and as the kid gets older, you kind of cut the cord a little bit more and more.
I get a copy of all my daughter's emails. It makes them bananas, but, but I do get it. So I want to discuss, too, this age group, particularly the age group we deal with, which is tweens. Getting their first cell phone is a very big deal, particularly in New York, where kids walk to school by themselves. Getting your first cell phone, and most parents will opt for the dumb phone versus the smartphone. But it's really an incredible idea to give kids sort of that first taste, I think.
Yeah, so we set out to build a product that that appealed to both parents and kids, and that's quite difficult to do, to achieve that balance. We've achieved it by essentially building something that appeals to the child. They can wear it on their wrist, and that's pretty cool. I mean, I don't know of any adult phone that you can wear on your wrist yet. So that's pretty cool. But they have the ability to wear it, and the parent, they remain connected to their parent. The parent remains in complete control of what the child can and can't do with the Philip phone. They can locate the child, they can call the child, but they can specify 5 numbers that the child can and can't call. So at the same time as being very empowering for the child, all of a sudden they can maybe go out, explore the world a little bit. The parents have a little bit more peace of mind that they can do that. The parent knows that they can always reach them. They're just a push of a button away, and they can always locate them on a map. And that's tremendously empowering for the child, a lot of peace of mind for the parent.
And it is really cool. It has an awesome cool factor, which is important rather than having the dumb phone where the kids are so totally aware that they have the dumb phone and not the smartphone. That would actually give you a step up, I think.
And that's right. We didn't want kids to feel like they were getting the rough end of the stick. They were getting something that was specifically designed for them that they could get excited about and really own. They don't really need a cell phone because they don't need a lot of the features that it's got. They certainly don't need a lot of the features the smartphone has when they're age 5, 6, up to kind of 9, 10, 11.
Right.
So we designed a cell phone essentially that has the features they want and the parents want too.
Yeah, that's great. I think for an amusement park, that would be great too. Like a trip to Disney, stick that on your kid's wrist and you're set to go. And I think you bring up a really important point about creating things that appeal to both the parent and the child. And I know Valerie, Raul, everyone on this panel really, that's a big thing to take in mind is how kids play, how parents want them to play, and how that is perceived between the two, and sort of making everyone happy in that context. Can you speak a little to that?
Yeah, definitely. We talked a lot this morning about educational apps and how 57% of parents who were asked the question said they would rather their kids play with an educational app rather than just a game. I think that's a very, very good number. Education does belong in every moment of the day, whether it's fun or whether it's at school. I know school can be fun, but it's not always fun, unfortunately. And our apps, for instance, come really as an addition to what happens at school. So they learn. Our apps are Montessori, but they're not used in Montessori schools because they're not needed there. They have all the Montessori stuff they need in the schools, right? But when they come back home after they've done some playing, or if they just need some help on a specific notion in math or in letter learning or whatever, then they can use the iPad. It's such an empowering tool, being interactive and fun. Just the tool itself is fun because it talks and it reacts to your fingertips. And Raul's app is a great image of that. And I think parents are really happy that their children are doing something smart, and children are feeling better about themselves without even knowing it, because they're doing something that the next day they will go back to school and they know a little bit more about what they were missing.
And what is that Montessori level that's in that app? I mean, what is that sort of foundation that you think you're able to bring in an iPad situation that's still Montessori?
In a 2D
Yeah.
environment, I know.
It's very
a
different.
big question. So although it's 2D, Montessori is based on sensorial learning. So you still get the vision, and you get the sound, and you get some touch, even though it's not 3D. But it's basically the pedagogy that's in there is learning by trying. So you try, you make mistakes. In our apps, there are no no. You just notice that it's not right because it's made so that you notice. So you try again until you succeed, which is the real story of life, isn't it? And then when you succeed, you go on to the next step, and the app basically follows your successes and your failures. So it's an individual learning environment. It follows your own successes and failures, whereas in a classroom, obviously, the teacher has to go with 30-odd children, and so it's
Figure it
difficult.
all out. And Raul, your app, The Human Body, I have to say, I had a ton of fun playing with your app. My daughters did too. But there is something about a kid being that engrossed in science, like sort of, and actually getting into the human body without kind of knowing that they're really learning.
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of the what we're trying to embed in all the apps is to, like, I'm a science geek. I've loved science my whole life. You know, my kids love science. We give them good toys to play with. And we try to do that in the physical world in our family. And I think in the digital world, there are too many toys that aren't thoughtful, that are, they're designed for speed as opposed to being designed for slowness. And, kids are infinitely curious about the world. And I think that you can take virtually any subject if you study it, enough and in sort of a careful, thoughtful way, and turn that into really interesting information for kids. So, for example, when we start designing an app, we have people that are education people and researchers who spend 6 months looking at a particular subject. They look at how it's taught, how it used to be taught, and how can we embed those that teaching in interactions that are fun for kids. In this first app, it's the human body. We have apps coming up that cover much broader subjects in the world, and we think each of them is going to, bring kids in. And there's a great article that a friend of mine wrote called "What Screens Want" by a guy named Frank Chimero, and it talks about how modern screens, especially touch screens, they can be anything. And we, as people that create digital content, I feel have a responsibility to create good things and things that are thoughtful. With respect to children being engrossed, on an iPad, there's usually a screen full of apps, and we don't have controls to control which ones that they touch. So when we sit them down, obviously we can buy sort of apps that we like, but there's always going to be an Angry Birds on most people's things. So you have to build an app that is going to engross a kid as much as that, the other app that is a different kind of play. And in terms of security, I think that it's really simple. You have to think as a parent, what would you want for your kid? So in our case, we take a somewhat radical approach in that we transmit no information about the child at all back to our server, not even for analytics purposes. And that's sort of an extreme case. I don't think it's a problem if it's anonymized, but there are a lot of people that sort of walk that line.
Oh, there are a lot of people that walk that line.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Lois, can you talk about KMS too, and what you guys are doing?
Okay, let's switch this camera on. Okay, so what we've got is an emergency communications device, not like the Flip, which is a mobile phone. This is about giving your child the rights to go outside. If they feel lost or vulnerable, basically they hit this button on the top, and it rings a simultaneous loop of 5 carers until one of them answers. Once the call system is activated, they can't disconnect the call from the wristband itself. It can only be disconnected from the carer or parent side. If you, as the parent or carer, want to ring the child, all you need to do is ring the wristband. It has a number. The user of the wristband doesn't have the right to answer the call or decline the call. It basically makes a noise and auto answers to the carer or the parent. On top here, we've got a 2D barcode, which is actually patented in Europe for any data monetary transaction. If you scan this, it gives you the top line information within 3 seconds of the person who's wearing the wristband. So it can be anything from emergency contact details, allergies, home address, picture, passport number, etc. What we've got as well is a web app, which is available on any device. You can download it in the App Store too. So here I've got 2 of my daughters walking around Las Vegas. You can check the battery level at any time you want. You can stream this information as little as every second or as maximum as once an hour. So we've got another one here. We also have geofencing on this wristband. So at the minute I've got various geo routes set up. And if you wanted to add a new route, all you need to do is press new route. For instance, if you wanted to go to Haraz, right in the center there, just tap around and create a geofence. So if we save this now as just a test, 7, save route.
And what happens if they leave that geofence area?
Well, if we assign this test now to one of the
You're
girls.
going to scare your children. We're gonna, I don't know if that's the best idea. I'm sort of in awe that they're walking around Las Vegas.
If they go outside this geofence, all it does is sounds an alarm on here, and it instantly rings the 5 carers. So if you were going to a mall and you wanted to put them in a creche, you can leave them there, and you know if you step 1 meter out of it, it's going to activate and call you all. This is actually a prototype, and it's going to be a lot smaller than this, and it's going to come with an optional lock as well, and it'll be released in May. The lock at the minute is just a standard watch buckle, but the one that you will get with the product, they can't take it off themselves. It'll be an access key where the parents or carers take it off when they get home. This wristband doesn't need to be plugged in at night. Basically, you put it on a device, so it's an inductive charger, so it's wireless charging.
No, that's great.
And it lasts for 48 hours if you're pinging it every second or 5 seconds. And if you're pinging it every 5 minutes, it's going to last more than 3 days. But I'm sure if you lost your kid, you're going to find them within 5 minutes because of the app. So you don't really need the 3 days battery life.
So, I mean, it's an interesting concept, and I think we've touched on this a little bit, which is how much, this is like helicopter parenting to the extreme. We're now digital helicopter parents. But on the other hand, perhaps it'll allow people to give their kids more freedom, things like the flip phone, and that, because I think we've all gone backwards, right? Kids, it's safer than ever, and kids are allowed less and less freedom. And you kind of hope that these kind of devices will give parents more peace of mind that maybe their kids can roam a little and have a little more independence.
Yeah, and if they say they go into the friend's house, you can draw a route around that friend's house, and if you can automatically just say where they're going, and you can then pinpoint where they are. And if they go out of the route, then you can give them the call. It rings you automatically.
I mean, it's an interesting, I think, all these things, even with the kids' email, all these things really are about still what we talked about in the beginning about empowering kids to sort of use technology and as a family use technology to sort of gain freedom rather than feeling bound by it. I think a lot of people, actually, all this technology can be really overwhelming and disconnect all of us rather than connect us to each other. And I'm wondering, if those are things you take into consideration when you're building technology for kids or for parents and families. Is this going to help sort of bring a family together? Is this something that's now going to, get kids just staring at a screen even more? Like, what is it about this that's actually sort of enhancing a family life through technology rather than just more screen time for everyone on their own device?
And I don't know if any of you saw Apple's Christmas commercial.
Yes.
I absolutely, well, I probably shouldn't. I think it brought out a big fear of Christmas time, or a lot of parents worry about giving their kids digital devices because they don't want them staring at them and missing out on real life. And so I think what you need to do is have a purpose for the app. And Raul brought this up. There's plenty of Angry Bird games out there, but if you can provide a solution to a common problem that doesn't create more of a problem, but solves a real need out there. With us, it's kids email and actually just being aware of what communication's going in and out. With Raul, I would agree that when I learn the most is not when I'm sitting down listening to a lecture. It's when I'm not knowing that I'm learning, when I'm figuring something out in real life or perhaps in an app that's educational. One thing I like about that watch idea is if I go shopping and leave my kids in the car for a couple of hours, if they ever leave.
I was thinking about the IKEA ball pit. That was the thing that was in my mind.
We always say with our apps that our goal is not to give answers, but to start conversations and to prompt questions.
Right.
With the technology stuff, I mean, I'm probably very liberal with my kids about technology, but I try to educate them about it. So I just got here on the plane, and as I was in the taxi over, my 6-year-old was texting me with homework problems that he wanted help on. And there was, some puzzle he couldn't figure out, and he was asking, how he could do it. And I was like, well, why don't you pick up some Legos and, try to piece together the thing that way? And it was great, Dad. That was, So, I mean, by teaching him how to text, and he has his own phone, he now feels sort of more connected on this trip when I'm away. But we have very firm boundaries about when kids can use things and not. We try to teach them to use them responsibly.
I just, the phrase helicopter parenting is something that we hear a lot these days with the advent of technology for kids. It has very negative connotations for the child, but when you see a child take a Philip, put it on their wrist, and make their first call, the look on their face is just priceless. So there's absolutely nothing negative about giving a child a piece of technology that enables them to go out and explore the world with a little bit more of freedom from the parent. And what we've seen as well is that it really encourages a dialogue, a conversation between the parent and the child. When they buy Philip for the child, they sit down and they run through how to use it. They go through some use cases, and it prompts a conversation about the responsibility of having a piece of technology, but also having that little bit more freedom, which is a very positive thing. So, we often get questioned, is this a product that's promoting helicopter parenting? I think completely the opposite, actually.
Yeah, I mean, we find the same thing on KidsViews because we're allowing kids to make videos for the first time, and we get videos all the time where we're like, oh my God, thank God this is on our site, not on YouTube, because the kid said, here's my address. If you liked my video, text me, please text me with their phone number. But at the same time, had they not had that experience with us where we were moderating and catching it and telling them what they did, they would do that on YouTube the first time and it would be out there. So I think things like this that are teaching them, what a cell phone is, responsibility for the gadget. I mean, that alone, every parent, right, takes out insurance the second you get your kid the first, cell phone. The responsibility for the stuff and the technology is a big thing for kids to learn.
Maybe one of the issues is that our digital natives are what they are, and that our generation is not that tech savvy, or some of it, and the people that are here are, but not all of us. And so the issue to me is that the parents need to teach the children how to use technology and how not to use it. And the scary thing about these devices is that you're not really teaching them where to be or where not to be. You're just monitoring them. And my 15-year-old, the other day somebody asked him, do you call your mom to let her know where you are, or have you tried smoking around the school? And he looked at them and said, no, she has this whole network of moms who are looking everywhere, and I know that if I do it, the minute I do it, somebody will call her up and tell her that. So he knows that I'm watching, even though I'm not watching. But and he's not wearing a device. That's the scare. I find these things a little bit scary on
that level. It's interesting because I think and this is probably a different discussion, but I think that's somewhat of a suburban versus city conversation. My daughters are growing up in New York City, and there's nowhere they can go without 8 bazillion people in our neighborhood seeing them, and they know the system, and they can hop in a cab, whatever it is. Whereas my cousins in the suburbs, there aren't even sidewalks. So if their daughter's walking from one house to another in the housing complex, it actually is kind of scary and dark, and she does get nervous. And usually they call when they get there or whatever it is. But there's a lack of physical community that maybe a lot of these devices are helping bridge, because you don't have that same community when you're in the
I'm
suburb.
just saying, I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying parents need to still be parents.
Yeah, parents.
Oh, yeah,
You know what I
completely
think?
agree with that.
What I think is really interesting is if I have a child and a cousin drives up and says, "Hey Luke, how are you?" and he says, "Fine," and they said, "Well, you want to come with me to the store?" That's one thing. If a complete stranger drives up and says, "Luke, how are you? I know who you are. Come with me," and as a parent, I think, "Yeah, I'll let him go. I don't want to be a helicopter parent." That sounds ludicrous, right?
Yeah.
But digitally, there's the same issue. What we have to balance is, do we let our kids use technology? And I think what we're all trying to solve is technology has its benefits, but we have to be aware of who our children are talking to, what the conversation is. For example, with kids' email, a parent can say, if they're part of the contact list, if we know who they are, I don't want to be copied. Let's just let the conversation go back and forth. But if it's a stranger, if it's somebody that my child doesn't know or I don't know, I want to be copied, or I may want to approve that first before it goes to him. And that child may have people in their lives that you're aware of that aren't a good influence, whether that's a relative or a friend or someone that you know. And this is common in many families where you say, "I really don't want this person contacting my child." Well, it might be a good idea, unbeknownst to everybody, if that email gets routed to a parent first for you to approve before your child can read it. So I think sometimes we look at things completely differently in technology world versus real life, but I think we should treat them the same.
Yeah, we always say parenting doesn't stop at a screen. I don't know why parents are so intimidated by the screen.
I think also there are some systems that are very appealing for kids that are just poorly designed for kids.
Yeah.
My kids are both Minecraft. They love Minecraft. And Minecraft, they teach each other in videos. And YouTube, it's like very easy to go from a Minecraft video to something completely inappropriate for kids without them doing anything wrong. So a lot of times these days they are big fans of DIY.org, which I'm a big fan of too, which is sort of a digital Boy Scouts. And they trade videos there, which it sounds like it's a lot like your site.
Yeah, we have a big Minecraft community and Lego and all that stuff. I mean, I think that is what it is. Kids, they're going to find themselves in bad places. Look, we all knew growing up, like, whose house had the porn, whose house had the drink, the alcohol that never got checked. And I think it's the same thing online, and that's why you have to have these conversations with your kids, because you can do whatever you want in your home, but they're going to go to a friend's house, and then game over. Like, there's an older brother, an older, whatever. And so that conversation just continually has to happen. And I think that's what you're saying, was these are, in many ways, conversation starters that just help facilitate this discussion about technology, or where it's safe to go and where it's safe not to, and those kind of things. I'm going to open it up to the audience now for questions. Anyone have questions? No questions? It was so thorough and covered everything you'd ever want to know about raising kids.
I think they want to know where their martinis are.
They're out of the fence that's shaped like the hexagon. It's going to beep when you go. No one has a question? Wow.
I'm going to ask the audience.
Okay.
How many people would buy their kids a watch, bracelet to wear to keep track of them? It's a fair number.
How many have kids with cell phones?
How many have rules about their cell phones?
How many people follow them?
If you were here during the kids section, actually Curio, which you should see on the show floor in the Venetian, announced an Android phone that looks as cool as any phone you and I have, but it has all the parental controls, geofencing and geolocation. It's a really good one to check out. I think they kind of jumped the shark on the jumped the next hurdle on what a kid's cell phone should look like.
How many people have technology rules for their kids? Like, have really sat down and had a discussion with their kids about what is allowed, what's not allowed, or when to come to you if they encounter something? Not as many as have cell phones. I mean, Beth Bleckerman, who moderated the last panel, coined the idea that the tech talk is the new sex talk, that it's sort of the next generation talk that parents have to have with their kids, that maybe schools will be taking over because parents aren't having that conversation with their kids. And it seems like these are all good ways to bring these things up, but it seems like parents aren't quite sure how to have that conversation, or even why maybe initially. There's always these sort of vague fears, but not a real hands-on way to tackle those issues.
I'm going to take that for 1 second and come. And my children are well in their 30s now, but grew up on Prodigy, CompuServe, and AOL. And so we had and I call it parental posturing. I didn't know what I was doing any better than they did online, but I did. If they got a note and they showed it to me and it was offensive, I literally sat down and I typed, "If you are an adult, I will find you and prosecute you to the full extent of the law. If you are a child, I will find you and your parents will never let you have a computer again." And I didn't know what I was going to do next, but they went away. So sometimes I think we forget common sense in the equation, that a little parental posturing that, I know what's going on just as well as you do, goes a long way. So I'll flip that 15 years further. I now have to ask my children permission to post on Facebook about them. It's like, can I post that you got a scholarship? No, it's embarrassing.
But I think that's a good point, and I think part of the reason the kids are growing up, like the kids want to be involved, is they see their parents, and I think parents actually don't think a lot about the digital footprint they're creating for their child. And so it's hard to say to your kid, don't post pictures of yourself, don't do this, when you've been posting pictures of them since they were, in the womb. It's a hard lesson to teach a kid that they should be very careful what they put out there when you're not, and especially about them. Yeah, your question.
I have a 12-year-old, and I recently signed him up for. Sorry, I know you're not listening to that. So I have a 12-year-old, and we've been navigating this field. I'd like to know how many of the panelists are Facebook friends or Instagram friends with their kids, and how you manage your content as a result of being friends with your kids.
There's a very interesting question. So my daughters are on Instagram, but their accounts are private. They're not on Facebook. And I really just use it to spy on them and their friends. So they follow my Kids Views account. I don't have a personal Instagram account. And it's really, it's honestly just totally voyeuristic. Like, it is so basic. And I can't imagine, I would never post anything on Facebook or Instagram that I wouldn't be okay with my kids seeing, because then I wouldn't be okay with most people seeing. That seems like, I definitely never post about them without asking them. And I think it would be weird if I had one set of rules for myself online and a different set for them. My rule with them is, if this was on a billboard in Times Square, would you be okay with it? And if not, then it should be out.
I have a little 16-month-old, so I'm not wrestling with this issue yet. But I am guilty of creating a digital footprint for her already, because I post, pictures of.
Because she's so cute.
She's so cute, But and parents, it's a great way of. I'm British and live over here, so it's a great way of family, keeping up with what's going on with her and everything. But I will think about that. That's a very good point.
Something else at the show, right downstairs at the Wall of Apps, which is one of our properties, there's a social network called Babies. It is the first social network for babies.
Oh,
and
God.
you can be on the road and send messages to your toddler, your 16-month-old, at home while you're on the road, and read stories to them. You can share pictures within a network. So an 8-year-old said the best thing to me once. He said, "I love talking to my grandma online because I don't have to yell." So it's a generation leveler also.
Yeah.
To answer your question, I think if you asked my kids about my Facebook account, they would tell you it's the dullest thing ever.
Right.
I told them I don't even post when I go away, because that's like a burglar signal. Hey, I'm away from my home. So I usually post when I come back from holidays. If I've had a nice time, I can post a picture, but it doesn't have any offensive content or anything.
My kids are all over my social media accounts, and also like on our company, like they're in our ads for our company, and it's sort of gone to their heads a little bit. So they now want to be in ads for other things as well, and it's it's a strange thing because they've always basically been online, and it sets up strange expectations sometimes. Like one of my kids was photographed for Halloween, and he was on the cover of the New York Times. And so this year, he was putting on his Halloween, or making his Halloween costume. He said, "Do you think this will make the Times?"
Also, my 3
high
and 5-year-old find it strange if you don't have a Facebook account. They don't have a Facebook account, but if they're talking to the great-grandparents, they say, "Oh, you'll see it on Facebook," if they've got presents, etc. for Christmas. They just find it strange if you don't have a Facebook account or social presence.
And then
So-
my kids aren't old enough to have a Facebook account yet. But I think, kids learn what you do, and I think what you post and what you say is who you are. So if you're going to teach your kids to behave a certain way, I think you have to behave the same way. That's what I believe anyway. And I think, just to answer your question, I think it's a great idea for parents to be friends with their kids on social networks and be consistent with the message you give your kids, with who you really are.
Anyone else?
Jacob, and I'm sorry, the lady from the Montessori environment. I think parenting is very important, and I think the phrase posturing as a parent is very important in teaching your kids. So what I'm actually doing is I'm teaching my kid kind of how to posture. And one of the things I'm teaching my kid related to, hey, all kids want a Gmail account. Here's kind of my bullet on that. It's like, hey, kiddo, let me tell you what. If you drop something accidentally, who do you want to find it? Do you want mom and dad to find it, or do you want someone else to just pick it up and decide what to do with it? When you are communicating in this space, there's all kinds of people looking at everything you're doing and what you're dropping, and they're going to pick it up and do what they want with it. If somebody's got to find what you drop, would you not rather it be mom and dad? And, also you could point out to them, hey, Google, I believe Gmail is up for wiretapping charges in California. You have to have a judge's order to listen to a phone call, but the way they're listening or reading everything that people are communicating, it's akin to communications, and so, why is that legal? So, the posturing thing, the teaching the kid, what I also tell her is the best answer for everyone out there oftentimes is the best answer for you. And that's that thing, it's like teaching them to be a leader rather than a follower. So those are just some thoughts there that make me stand on it.
Yeah, so I think those are some good points. One thing I think is a great idea is even before your kids come to ask for an email address, if they're getting to be of the age, approach them with a safe email address and tell them why it's so cool. Like with kids' email, Gmail doesn't have this. You have an app where you can draw a smiley face or a heart and send it to your grandma or whoever it is. It's very simple to use. Or if they receive an email, they can hit a button and it'll read it to them. And then when they grow up, they have something that they think is really cool. If they come to you and say, "I want a Gmail account," and you say, it's more difficult to posture. I think you can still spin it in a great way and say, "Well, we can get you something better, and it'll help me help you, and it also has some cool features." I think you can still spin it, but I think one of the best ways to do it is you come up with the idea and say, "Hey, how would you like an email account? Let me show you something really cool." And if you're the first one to say it and you can spin it right from the beginning, they're the cool kid on the block because they have an email account and they can send smiley faces and do all sorts of stuff that the other kids can't do yet.
I think with the email addresses as well, both my children have an email address from my own company. So I get copied in on anything that comes in, but that is their email address for the iMessage. Both of them have an iPad, so they can all talk to the grandparents themselves. They all know how to read and write and text and put smiley faces in. But I think if you monitor your own spam level and create your own domain, you could obviously get a safe email, but if you want one to go for the longevity of it, I'd suggest buying your own domain and getting a good spam filter on the inbox.
Just to finish off on the parenting, I was saying that the Montessori pedagogy is you learn by trying and making mistakes. Well, when I allowed my son to have his Facebook account. He was so excited but had no friends on Facebook. He started setting up Facebook accounts for all his friends. So then I got the parents calling me saying, your son set up a Facebook account for my daughter. 1, she's not allowed. 2, she doesn't have the passcode. So he's the only one who can put who can post on it. So I had a conversation with him. And we can make mistakes as parents, but if we don't, if we don't come up with these situations, then we don't know about them, and then we can't teach them.